The Lost Cigar Brands of Havana. There is a factory in Havana where a name from 1810 still hangs above the door. Walk past it today and most tourists won't even glance up. But collectors know that name. They whisper it in humidor rooms in London, in private clubs in Geneva, and back rooms of cigar shops from Miami to Manila. That name was once the most imitated brand in the history of tobacco. It was smoked by an emperor. It survived a monarchy that tried to outlaw it before it even existed. And then, in the space of a single revolution, it vanished, along with more than 100 other names that once defined what it meant to smoke well. This is the story of how an empire of cigars built over a century and a half nearly disappeared in a decade. It's a story of kings, revolutionaries, machines, and the smell of tobacco leaves curing in warehouses that no longer exist. By the end, you'll understand why collectors still hunt through estate sales and auction houses hoping to find one single sealed box, because what's inside might be the last physical proof that these brands ever existed at all. Why these cigars matter. To understand why a cigar brand deserves a documentary, you have to understand what a cigar brand actually was in the 19th century. It wasn't packaging. It wasn't marketing. It was a signature, a guarantee stamped onto a box that the tobacco inside had been grown, cured, and rolled by people who had spent their entire lives mastering nothing else. The best of these Havana brands weren't just popular, they were cultural landmarks. They sat on the desks of European aristocrats. They were referenced in novels. A British poet once wrote an entire verse comparing the peace of a good Havana to the calm of married life, and concluded only half joking that the cigar won. Kings gave them as gifts. Emperors carried them into exile. Collectors today pay extraordinary sums, not because the tobacco has improved with age, it hasn't. Cigars are not wine, but because a surviving box is a sealed capsule of a world that no longer exists, the hands that rolled it, the leaf that grew in soil that's since changed, the factory that's since been renamed, gutted, or repainted a shade of pink nobody asked for. That's what makes this story worth telling. These weren't just cigars, they were the last physical fingerprints of a Havana that vanished. The origin story. Our story begins before Cuba was even legally allowed to sell cigars. In the final years of the 18th century, the Spanish crown held a total monopoly over Cuban tobacco. Growing it, rolling it, selling it commercially, all of it required royal permission that ordinary Cubans simply didn't have. A man named Francisco Cabañas ignored that entirely. Around 1997, in defiance of the monopoly, Cabañas began rolling cigars in Havana under his own name. It was, in the truest sense, an act of quiet rebellion, a private citizen building a commercial brand out of a plant the crown insisted only it could profit from. By 1810, with the political winds shifting, Cabañas formally registered his brand. Historians still debate the exact year the brand was truly born, 1797 or 1810, but what's certain is this: Cabañas became the first independent registered cigar brand in Cuban history. Then, in 1821, King Ferdinand VII finally lifted the restrictions and authorized cigar cultivation and export. The floodgates opened. Within a generation, a wave of new names entered the market. Por Larrañaga, in 1834, founded by a Spanish immigrant who'd arrived in Havana less than a decade earlier. Ramon Alones. Punch, started by a German settler in 1840. H. Upmann. Partagas. One after another, the great houses of Havana rose out of this narrow window of the 19th century, all of them standing, whether they knew it or not, on the precedent Cabañas had set by breaking the rules first. By the time Por Larrañaga opened its first factory on a modest street in Havana, it had already earned a nickname among locals, the University of Havana, a name that stuck because of the discipline and precision the rollers there were known for. It wasn't hyperbole, it was a reputation earned leaf by leaf. The Golden Age. By the end of the 19th century, Havana wasn't just producing cigars, it was producing legends. Cabañas cigars had already crossed the Atlantic decades earlier. Introduced to England and the United States as one of the very first Havana brands most Europeans and Americans had ever tasted, the brand became so respected that at the Great Exhibition, the massive international showcase held in London in 1851, Cabañas walked away with a gold medal. 2 glass display boxes made for that exhibition still exist today, sitting in a private museum in London, sealed with cigars inside that are believed to be among the oldest surviving cigars in the world. Por Larrañaga, meanwhile, was building an entirely different kind of legend, one measured not in medals but in admirers. By 1900, it was being smoked in the grand hotels of Berlin, Paris, London, St. Petersburg, and Vienna. One book from the era went so far as to call it the single most important cigar brand in existence. Rudyard Kipling immortalized it in verse. Wealthy widows and industrialists alike kept it in their private collections, and for decades a Larrañaga was shorthand for having arrived socially, financially, culturally. Behind these names were people whose entire lives were consumed by the craft. Master rollers, torcedores, trained for years, not weeks, to earn the right to roll for the great houses. Their hands, and only their hands, decided whether a cigar drew evenly, burned cleanly, and aged with grace. This was not manufacturing. This was inheritance, a skill passed from one generation of Cuban hands to the next. But behind the glamour, something was already stirring that would test every one of these houses to their core. The hidden story. Here's what most people don't know. The first real crisis to hit these legendary brands wasn't political, it was mechanical. In the early 20th century, Por Larrañaga did something no other Cuban cigar house had dared. It imported cigar rolling machines from the United States and became the first Havana factory to produce cigars mechanically. On paper, it was progress. The machines cut production costs by roughly a quarter and could train a new worker in 2 weeks instead of the years it took to train a roller by hand. But to the torcedores, the very craftsmen whose skill had built the brand's reputation, this wasn't progress. It was an existential threat. Their trade, honed over a lifetime, was suddenly competing with a machine that could be operated by anyone. Strikes broke out. A boycott followed. Eventually, facing pressure from the very workforce that had made its name synonymous with quality, Por Larrañaga backed down and returned the machines. It was a warning most of the great houses chose to ignore, that the thing making these brands legendary, human hands, human patience, was also the thing that made them fragile. Ownership was shifting, too. In 1937, Por Larrañaga was sold, passing into the hands of a British company. Cabañas, meanwhile, had already changed hands once through marriage and family partnership, becoming Hija de Cabañas y Carvajal, a name almost nobody outside Cuba remembers today, even though the brand behind it had once been imitated more than any other Havana on earth. These were businesses now, not just legacies. And businesses can be bought. Businesses can be sold. And in 1959, everything changed at once. The fall. The Cuban Revolution didn't destroy the cigar industry overnight. What it did was far stranger. It fractured it piece by piece over the course of a decade. As the new revolutionary government took power, many factory owners fled the island entirely, taking their expertise, their capital, and in some cases their brand rights with them, which is why several of these old Havana names now exist today as 2 separate companies, a Cuban version, nationalized and state-run, and a non-Cuban version, rebuilt from scratch by exiled founders in places like the Dominican Republic. Other factories were nationalized outright and folded into a new state tobacco authority. Some lingered for a few more years, selling into the American market until the United States imposed its trade embargo in 1963 and severed access to what had been their largest customer overnight. The numbers tell the real story better than any single anecdote could. Before the revolution, Cuba was home to roughly 140 distinct cigar brands. By the mid-1960s, only 24 remained, 116 names gone, not gradually forgotten over generations, but erased within a single decade. Cabañas was one of the casualties. Production of the original brand ceased in 1962. The name that had once been the most imitated in cigar history, the brand that helped introduce Europe and America to Havana cigars in the first place, simply stopped. Por Larrañaga survived, but barely resembled its former self. It remained in production through the 1970s, but by the following decade, output had dropped sharply. In the 1990s, a trademark dispute further limited where the cigar could even legally be sold, shrinking its reach to a handful of countries. For years, what remained of Por Larrañaga was made almost entirely by machine, the very method its own workers had once gone on strike to stop. The University of Havana had become an afterthought. The collector's hunt. But this is where the story takes an unexpected turn, because forgetting a brand and erasing its history are two very different things. Long after Cabañas stopped production, the name refused to disappear completely. In 1989, decades after its collapse, the Cuban government revived Cabañas as a machine-made cigar. Sold primarily to Eastern European markets, a shadow of its former self, but proof the name still carried enough weight to be worth reviving at all. Production continued in that reduced form until it was finally discontinued again in 2004. For collectors, though, the real prize was never the revival, it was the original. Pre-revolution Cabañas boxes, sealed, untouched, decades old, occasionally surface at estate sales and specialist auctions in Europe. One collector, writing about a box he'd purchased at a Spanish auction, described discovering it sat alongside two other historic Cabañas boxes with remarkable provenance, one that had belonged to Napoleon III, complete with a handwritten note from the estate sale where it was found, and another bearing the ornate crest of the Spanish crown itself. These boxes aren't purchased to be smoked. Nobody expects a 200-year-old cigar to taste good. Tobacco doesn't improve indefinitely, unlike wine, and most vintage cigars are simply too dry to enjoy. They're purchased as artifacts, as physical proof that a world existed where a rebellious cigar roller could defy a monarchy and build something that outlasted empires, embargoes, and revolutions, for a while at least. Por Larrañaga's story took a gentler turn. In 2002, the brand announced that all of its cigars would once again be made entirely by hand, a quiet reversal of the very automation crisis that had scarred it a century earlier. It's still a small operation today, producing only a handful of vitolas, one of them distinguished by the brand's only colored cigar band. It's not the international sensation it once was, but it survived. Not every name from that golden era can say the same. The legacy. So why does any of this still matter? A story about cigar brands that most people alive today have never even heard of. Because these weren't just products. They were evidence of something almost impossible. An entire ecosystem of craft, reputation, and human skill built by hand over a century, defying a monarchy, surviving world wars and economic collapse, only to be undone not by a lack of quality, but by history moving faster than any single brand could adapt to. Of the roughly 140 brands that once defined the Golden Age of Havana, most are gone completely. A handful survive in name only, machine-made shadows of what they were. And a small few, Por Larrañaga among them, clawed their way back to the craftsmanship that made them legendary in the first place. Somewhere in a private collection, in a humidor climate controlled to the exact degree, there may still be a sealed box of Cabañas cigars, pressed, rolled, and boxed by hands that have been gone for over a century. Nobody will ever smoke what's inside. But that's not really the point anymore. Some cigars disappear because the world simply forgets them. Others disappear the way legends do, not by fading away, but by being sealed permanently at the exact moment they were at their best.